Hello, EDU 410. This is your instructor, Jared Berg, and I am looking forward to getting started on our second full week of online instruction here, beginning Module 3, focused upon organization and teaming. Important concepts when we think about middle level education. So let's go ahead and get started with a question. And my question that I'd like you to think through, it says quick write, and if we were in the face-to-face classroom back in old Glidden Hall, I would probably ask you to reflect on this in writing, but I just want you to think a little bit about the nature of a school. A school is a business. A school is a place with massive amounts of people coming and going, and there has to be some system in place in terms of how we organize these little people, right? And I want you to think about the most effective methods of organization. How do we determine which students go where and at what times and who is there to supervise them? Right? The whole idea of creating a schedule for students. So some common answers to this idea of how a school should be organized might be by grade. We organize students by their academic grade, and this is seen in virtually all K-12 environments where we have kindergartners in one room and first graders in another, and it sort of goes like that all the way up through high school. But that's not always the case. Sometimes we structure and organize students by their age. And so even though they might be academically or intellectually able to be in a higher grade, we sort of keep them with their like peer groups. And we think that having them next to people of a similar age is a social benefit for them rather than academically. What about by gender? Now, this might strike you as odd, living as you do as a Generation Z college student in the 21st century, but for a lot of years, this was common practice. And even today, this is often common practice in health classes, physical education classes, amongst others. Should we organize students based on their ability? Casting aside their academic grade level, their age, their gender, and just group them based on their IQ or their measured intelligence or their ability to complete certain work? What about subject or disciplinary? Should we organize schools and classes based on English courses and history courses and reading courses and math courses? If that's the case, we might, especially in a high school setting, have students that are freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors all in the same course. Is that helpful? Is that beneficial? Why or why not? How about by race? Now, the list could go on, and there are certainly positives to some of these, and there are probably negatives to all of these. I could add a student's language. Should we separate them based on their language? How about their socioeconomic status? But I have to end the list somewhere, and so what I'm going to ask you to do right now is, if you haven't yet, to go ahead and to download over on the right-hand side of the Module 3 tab, I'd like you to download the Organization and Teaming Note Sheet. And up at the very top of that, I'm going to ask you to pause this video and to think about these 6 categories and list any positives or negatives you see in organizing or structuring school and instruction based on these criteria. Go ahead and pause the video and just hit resume whenever you're ready to continue. All right, our objective for today on Monday, as well as on Wednesday when we have our face-to-face via WebEx conferencing team meeting, is to participate in a team time activity in order to experience what a real middle school team meeting feels like from a teacher's point of view. You will also be able to communicate the benefits and necessary conditions required for teams to operate effectively. Our driving question for today is, why is it that team-based organization is essential for middle-level learners? And I want to begin by answering the question, what do we mean when we talk about team? We have sports teams, we have academic teams, there are teams that we root for and cheer for. We call our business associates a team sometimes. So let's go ahead and clarify what we're talking about when we're talking about interdisciplinary teams at the middle level. An interdisciplinary team is a group of teacher advocates, keeping in mind that all students need an advocate in the middle level setting. A group of these teachers composed of a diverse variety of disciplines. So you're going to have the math teacher meeting with the science teacher, meeting with the language arts teacher and the social studies teacher and the phys ed teacher and everybody. But that's not all. We also invite people with other roles within the school community, such as counselors or nurses or principals. See, the commonality of all of these people that are part of the team is not necessarily what they teach or what role they play. It's that they all share a common concern for a common population of students. And so most frequently we see in the middle level that we divide students into groups of 90 to 120, and they all share the same math teacher and the same language arts teacher and the same history teacher. And if we're really good about this organization, they all have the same guidance counselor. And if there are discipline issues, they have the same principal involved with that. And then we all come together as teachers having a common group of students that we care for, and we are able to meet in order to discuss the learning of our students, any issues or concerns, and to plan integrated learning activities. I wanted to bring up one example. I spent some time in Harrisburg when I was in K-12 education, and I didn't work at Harrisburg North Middle School, but I wanted to bring up this website because I thought this is a good example of what a middle school team does. Okay, and so this is the week leading up to spring break before the COVID-19 chaos that we're now experiencing. But you can see here that we have each teacher named and what they teach, and then they have their assignments listed. And this is helpful to have all in one place so that no matter who I am, maybe I'm the math teacher, but I have all of these students in my class at one point in the day, and I have an idea of what's going on in language arts class, or what's going on in history class, what's going on in science class. And then also on this website, I thought this was great. We have these different teachers right here, and they're able to provide links to their personal websites. Let me go back. There's another one here. Who was it? Was it the Snyder here? Okay, she must be language arts. You can see that one there. There's another one. Let's try science. We have different ways of communicating with students and with other teachers. And so that's what's important to recognize about an interdisciplinary team. All of the teachers involved in this team share a common group of students. But we can't just put teachers together and say, hey, you have some of the same students, so we're going to call you a team. The Association for Middle-Level Education says there are actually 5 characteristics or criteria that must be met in order for a team to be considered an effective team. First characteristic, there has to be a culture of discourse, meaning when we meet, we're able to have conversations and discuss the big and important ideas in education in regards to our students. We must have a clearly defined purpose and specific and measurable goals. So we can't just meet. It's not enough to just meet and just talk about whatever comes up. We have to have a designated and defined purpose and then specific goals that we're able to periodically assess and determine whether or not we're meeting those goals. We have to first of all define and then commit to following a common group of norms, roles, responsibilities, rules, in a sense that maybe we're not going to speak negatively, maybe we're not going to bring up side conversations or stories about our weekend or whatever, because when we're in the team meeting, we're focused on speaking about team matters. We need to be disciplined in maintaining our focus in order to meet the goals that we have established in criteria number 2. And then finally, we have to have effective communication, both internally in terms of our team and our school and our building, but also externally in terms of how we communicate with parents or other schools represented throughout our district. One of the important features of middle school interdisciplinary teams is that they share a common planning time. Now, it's important to note that this is not your typical planning time where you're sitting in your classroom and planning activities for your students or assessing their assignments, grading their work, whatever the case might be. So this common planning time is a common time for all of the members of the team. That's teachers as well as administrators and counselors and nurses and so on, to meet together to discuss the students that they are all caring for. So what are the features of common planning time? Well, first, we need to have a designated space and a designated time to complete this team planning. We might be meeting in one of the teacher's classrooms. Maybe there's a teacher planning center or a particular office that's reserved for this. And we also need to have a designated time in our day, in our schedule, carved out to make this happen. During that time, we're able to coordinate curriculum with each other. As the language arts teacher, I'm able to understand what the math teacher's doing, what the science teacher's doing, what the history teacher's doing. And then also, if there are areas of overlap, we're actually able to coordinate our curriculum so that we can build off of what students are learning in other classes. I found that in the 2 middle schools I worked at, when we had common planning time, we would coordinate curriculum so as not to overwhelm students with too much work on certain days. So if the science teacher was adamant that she was going to have a test on Friday, then as the language arts teacher, I would try to the best of my ability not to have a test on Friday. So we could sort of balance out the workload a little bit and not overwhelm students. During this common planning time, we're able to coordinate assignments, assessments, and feedback. We're able to discuss students and how they are performing within our classroom. And we're able to talk about the way that we have spoken to those students and provided feedback. And this is an opportunity to make sure we're catching all of the students that might be struggling in any or all of our classes. And also, it's an opportunity for us to recognize students who might need to be on alert. If you're struggling in language arts, but you're also struggling in science and math, then we need to get going on an intervention strategy to help you succeed. This is also an opportunity for us to divide the students and to communicate with parents or guardians regarding the success of their students. And one misconception is that the only time as teachers we ought to contact parents is when their students are struggling. I find that if I can early on in the semester or early on in the school year establish communication with all parents by giving a good news phone call home or sending a good news text or a good news email, that's just as helpful as getting a hold of the parents when there's a problem situation arising. And often parents are more receptive to hearing from the teachers when a difficult situation arises if the teacher has previously contacted the parent to talk about positives. And this is also an opportunity for us to contact and communicate with other school personnel. Maybe we're planning an activity that requires the use of the gym, and we need to talk to custodians within our building to make sure it's all right if we keep the bleachers up for that day. Maybe we need to call in another teacher from another area, maybe the technology teacher, because we're trying to plan some sort of big technological activity and we need some of their guidance. Maybe we're going to invite the head principal in because we need to discuss some urgent matters and they don't normally attend our meetings. Oftentimes I find at the elementary or the high school level, when teachers hear that middle school teachers have a second planning time, a common planning time, they think, oh, this is just another hour that middle school teachers get to just grade essays. Well, that's certainly not the case. What I've found is that in those schools where I've been part of an interdisciplinary team, and we've had two planning periods, one for personal plan and one for team planning, that's created more work for me, because after meeting with my interdisciplinary team, I'm typically given assignments to go and then to contact parents or to organize materials or to plan things for us as a team rather than me and my individual class alone. So what are the conditions of effective teams? What makes, according to the research, an interdisciplinary team effective? See, many schools will say, oh yeah, we use a teaming concept. But if they don't meet all three of these criteria, then they're not following the research-based guidelines for effective teams. The first criteria is that common planning time must be provided in excess of 4 times per week. That means more than 4 times a week. That means the team needs to meet every single day for 40 minutes or more. And so if your school is not providing teachers an opportunity every day to meet for 40 minutes or more, then you are not meeting the conditions of research-based effective teaming. The second criteria is that team sizes must be fewer than 120 students. Because if we have a team that's 150, 170, 180 students, then we're not as effectively able to ensure that every single student has an adult advocate. But if we have 5 teachers on the team, or we have 6 teachers on the team, and we only have 120 students, then that assures us that every teacher is able to connect and relate to each student on our team. And finally, we need to take into consideration the length or the stability of team members and their tenure within the building. This is where things like the Enneagram that we study in EDU 304 are really important, because the personalities of different team members, their various strengths and weaknesses, all impact and affect how this team operates and how effective it is in reaching and meeting the needs of all students. So what is your task as we move forward into Wednesday's team meeting? Well, what I'm going to ask you and your team to do is to simulate an actual middle school team meeting. And so you see, based on the 3 colors of teams, that I have divided you into a blue team, a green team, and an orange team. And my goal is to meet with each of those teams for approximately 40 minutes. And on Wednesday, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll send out an email invite to our WebEx application. You'll go ahead and follow that link to log into WebEx, and it's going to ask to use your video camera and your microphone, and you'll want to do that. And then I'm going to kind of explain how this all works, and then I'm going to step back. And I'm going to allow you as a team to go through the required materials and work out how you want to do this and what vision you have for your team. I'm really just there to sort of facilitate things and then step back. But what I'm going to ask you to do now is I'm going to ask you to turn to the back side of your note sheet for today. And you notice that I have a spot for you to write your name, and you can go ahead and put your name down, whatever that is. And then I'm asking for you to circle, it might be easier using the computer to highlight, which teacher you are. Well, how do I know what teacher I am, Berg? Well, let's just go in order based on the way I've divided your teams. So if I can use the blue team as an example, let's just say that Erica is teacher A, Kaylee is teacher B, Taylor will be teacher C, Naomi will be teacher D, and Cassie will be teacher E. And then as a group, you're going to want to decide early on, what's our name? What do we want to call ourselves? Are we 8 Blue? Are we the Fighting Frogs? What are we? And then what grade level are we trying to kind of simulate here? Now that's not really super important, but it does give your team some measure of identity. And so before I move forward, just a reminder that my expectation then would be that I will meet with all members of the blue team on Wednesday. This would be Wednesday, April 1st. I'll meet with all members of the blue team right around 10 o'clock a.m. Central Time. I'll meet with all members of the green team at 10:40, and I'll meet with all members of the orange team right around 11:20. And all you'll need to do is you can expect an email from me either today or in the near future. And you'll just need to follow the link from the Cisco WebEx in order to log into that meeting. And you each will have a responsibility based upon your label as teacher A, B, C, D, or E. What are those responsibilities? Well, oftentimes when I was involved in a middle school team, we would have a team leader. And that was a person who was designated to kind of guide the discussion and the operation of the team. And what I would receive an email every Monday from that team leader would be an agenda of what we need to accomplish either that day or throughout that week. What I've provided for you on the back of your note sheet and also on the screen here is a sample agenda. When you meet via WebEx on Wednesday, this is your agenda. This is your mission log. This is what I hope you accomplish. And you can access all of these materials by clicking over on the right-hand side of Module 3. Each one of you, depending upon your label, will be responsible for a particular task. So Teacher A is going to record the team minutes. Teacher B, review roles and responsibilities. Teacher C will facilitate updating the homework assignments. Teacher D will discuss or lead the discussion in the student scenarios. And Teacher E will help guide the conversation, determining your interdisciplinary unit theme. So what does this mean? Well, you might be responsible for that document, and that will be the document that you upload under coursework for Module 3. But it doesn't mean that you kind of just rest and relax after that, because all 5 of these tasks require the participation of all 5 of the team members. But as we move through this, just a reminder, and I want to give you an example of what each of these would look like. We'll begin by having a record keeper. What's important with the team minutes is that we take some notes regarding what was discussed that day in the team meeting. Why is this important? Well, for one, your administrators aren't going to be able to make it to every team meeting. Neither are your counselors. Librarians probably won't. And oftentimes teachers can't make it to every single team meeting. Maybe they're out sick, maybe they have a field trip, maybe there's some other pressing concern that's pulling them out of the team meeting for that day. By keeping a record of minutes, typically this is kept in an online format, that allows anybody who is absent from the meeting to quickly scan through and figure out where you're at in your discussion. What was discussed that day, which students might have been discussed. Now certainly this is all kept confidential, but it allows anybody who's not able to make it to the team meeting to still understand what's happening. So Teacher A, your job throughout the course of this meeting is going to be to write down any descriptions or discussions related to the other 4 tasks that you need to complete. And so as we work our way through the meeting, you will just take notes of things that are said and discussed, and then you will upload this under coursework on MyUSF. That is your assignment. And you can see over here that I've broken up based on your names and your location, who are the Teacher A's. So Erica, Caitlin, and Charlotte will be, for their respective teams, the people responsible for recording team minutes. How about Teacher B? Well, here you can see that we have Kaylee, we have Kayla, and we have Abby, and their responsibility is to review the roles and responsibilities, the group norms. So they'll go over to the right-hand side of Module 3 and they'll download the team roles and responsibilities. And then as soon as the meeting begins, they'll just go through and remind everybody of the norms. This is our task. Remember, we need to have a detailed plan specific direction for what we're going to accomplish and the goals that we're going to accomplish. So it's common practice at the beginning of every meeting to read through these norms and remind other members of the team, this is the expectation. Teacher B, you'll be responsible for that. And then you will reflect upon that on the bottom of your document, and you will upload that to MyUSF. Teacher C, these are the two Taylors as well as Holly. Your responsibility is to update the homework assignments. Now, this doesn't need to be done in isolation. You can have a collaboration with the other teachers, but you need to determine what is it that students are going to be doing in math class for that day, and then what's the homework assignment. Same with language arts and science and social studies. This is similar to the website that I showed you from Harrisburg North Middle School, where the teachers update the homework on the website so that everybody is aware of the expectations for each student that day. Teacher C, when you've finished with this, then you'll go ahead and you'll upload this document to MyUSF. Teacher D, that'd be Naomi, Amanda, and Bryn, you're going to be responsible for leading conversations dealing with a couple of student scenarios. We have some students on our team that are facing challenges. Lethargic Larry, vocal Vincent, and emotional Emma. And we need to discuss these situations, and we need to come up with action plans and steps that we can take in order to get these students the help that they need. Teacher D, you won't be the only one talking, but you'll be guiding the discussion during our team meeting. You'll be taking down any notes that your team discusses and reporting on any action items, and then you will upload this document to MyUSF. And finally, Teacher E. This is Cassie, Emma, and Miranda. When we get to the end of the team meeting, it's important for us to discuss our upcoming interdisciplinary unit. What do I mean by interdisciplinary unit? This is an opportunity for all of the teachers who are part of the team to teach their content relative to a common theme. And so some examples might be, we're all going to teach our content, but we're going to be focused on the Iditarod. And so in math class, we might be measuring the distance between one stop on the Iditarod dog race and another one. And in language arts class, we might be reading a novel that has to do with the Iditarod or dog sleds. And in history or geography, we might be discussing the importance of dog sleds to the Alaskan Indians, or the geography that these mushers have to traverse as they compete in this race. Another example might be the 1960s. And so everything that we're teaching in our classes somehow connects or relates to this particular decade. Maybe we're going to focus on a historical topic like the Revolutionary War. And that seems like it's isolated to social studies, but we're going to read a novel such as My Brother Sam is Dead in language arts class. And maybe we're going to talk about the cost of goods in math class. And maybe we're going to take a look at the distance between battles and the numbers of people who participated in these battles. You see, the idea here is that you and your team are coming up with a common theme, and then taking your collective wisdom, you're trying to determine activities that students will be able to do in all of these major courses of learning. And then what you will do, Teacher E, is you will complete this document and you will upload that to MyUSF in order to receive credit. And finally, after you've finished engaging in this simulated middle school team role play, I'd like you to reflect on the challenges as well as the benefits for teachers in the middle level who engage in middle level interdisciplinary teaming. And you will take that note sheet and you will all upload that to MyUSF in order to complete your attendance for the day. I hope I've made this as clear as possible. If you have any pressing questions, feel free to email me. I will have my email open and running during the time of our team meetings, so if there are people who are struggling to connect, you'll be able to email me that way, and hopefully I'll be able to give you some guidance. My strongest suggestion is that you would all plan on using a computer in order to do this so that you're able to share your screens if necessary. Though this will also be able to be done on a tablet, and if you quite literally don't have any other option, you could log in with your smartphone. So I know that there might be a little bit of nervousness about how we connect and how all this is going to look. Just bear with me. Let's give it the best try that we can. And I think that we'll find at the end of it that it's actually going to be a pleasant experience. And I think we'll have limited issues connecting. Well, folks, that's all I have for you today. You don't necessarily need to upload your organization and teaming note sheet quite yet. Though, as I take a look at our updated schedule here, I do want to remind you that you do have the assignment of reading the Cognitive Distortions handout and completing that forum discussion by Wednesday, April 1st. So please do make sure that you're taking a look at these other items that are listed above the daily assignments so that you are keeping pace with all of the expectations for this course. On Wednesday, in addition to meeting with the team, the expectation is that you will also read the depression and anxiety article that is available under the resources in MyUSF and complete that forum discussion by Sunday, April 5th. Take care, everybody. I will talk to you live and in person, well, digital person, on Wednesday.